Just watching President Trump and President Macron at their arrival at a war museum, an army museum actually here in Paris, their first meeting, and then later on they will have other meetings, more serious meetings, but they're going to do a little tour of this museum. Elaine Cobbe is standing by on the phone. Elaine, I want to get to the nature of these next 2 days and what the two men will most likely be talking about. But first, give us a brief summary of this museum. What is it like? What happens here?
Well, Les Invalides is a very old complex of buildings in the 7th arrondissement, just by the river. This is a former military hospital. This is where all the top generals have been buried. This is where Napoleon's tomb is, and the two leaders will be visiting Napoleon's tomb very shortly. It's the scene of military honors. There's a military museum here. It's very much the heart of all the pomp and ceremony around France's military. Now, they've reviewed the troops, the two leaders together, and then they will visit the area and the museum itself and Napoleon's tomb. All of this is being seen here somewhat as a clever move on the part of President Macron, because President Trump likes military things, and this is something that they believe he would enjoy, partly for himself and also because it's very much in keeping with the overall theme of this visit, which is the commemoration of the entrance of the U.S. into the First World War back in 1917.
Yeah, indeed, and I know that the president will be the guest of honor at the Bastille Day Parade, and they will dine at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Some may be surprised by this visit because it certainly seemed like the two men got off to a bit of a rocky start. They took veiled jabs at each other periodically, and there was that awkward initial handshake. But this could really be, particularly if this meeting goes well, this could be a really big win for Macron.
Yes, it could. And President Macron came in on an unexpected landslide, and he's still very popular. The French are very much giving him a chance to see what he'll do. And part of that is because he did so well on the international stage in his first week as president. There just happened to be a whole slew of events, including that meeting with President Trump. But he impressed people, so they went, okay, he has very little experience. Let's see what he does. And he's made no secret of the fact that he would like to be the European leader who helped to bring President Trump a little closer to European views on particularly climate change, the Paris Accords, but also immigration and trade deals. And so Macron is very much hoping that this visit, which is official but isn't about issues, it's not about coming up with new plans, it's very much about remembering the past and consolidating the relationship. And he's hoping that this will be a way of showing that, you know, both to the Americans and to the French, and also to President Trump himself, that France is still a strong ally. And, you know, the two men are walking through Les Invalides now, smiling and talking congenially. So, and it does help, of course, that President Macron speaks perfect English. So there's no issue with translators. There's no problems with trying to, you know, go through other people on what they're saying.
Yeah, you mentioned, you know, Macron perhaps bringing President Trump closer to sort of a European point of view, because the men do differ on a lot of in a lot of different areas. They differ on immigration. They differ on trade. They certainly differ on climate change. And when the president announced that he was pulling the U.S. out of the Paris Accord, he said, "I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris." And Emmanuel Macron sort of with a little jab back, launched the Make the Planet Great Again initiative, a little bit of a ding to the Make America Great Again slogan. So there are the differences. But talk to me about what they have in common.
They both agree on the broad lines of the fight against terrorism, and that's very close to both their hearts. France, of course, has been victim of a wave of terrorist attacks and is still in a state of national emergency. Syria which is of course part of all of that, is another subject that they agree on many levels. There are shifting ideas within it, but the basic plan, their basic ideas for moving forward are similar. And that is something that they will be working on and something they will certainly talk about, because it is a big concern to both. And France is involved in the international coalition in fighting against ISIS. And that is something very much that the two have in common.
And, the president leaves behind a brewing scandal, I suppose, here at home with Donald Trump Jr.'s release of a series of emails, an email chain in which he was willing to meet with a Russian attorney. And at least Donald Trump Jr. believed to get information that was damaging to Hillary Clinton that was coming directly from the Russian government. He expressed his support for his son before he left, Donald Trump did, but he's leaving all that behind, sort of. He will be taking a couple of questions at a press conference. No doubt any journalist, at least from the States, who's asked to ask a question is going to bring that up. Of course, there's also the French press, who may not be as, may be even more open and direct with their questioning. Is there a concern that, what has been brewing here in the U.S. is just going to overshadow this entire visit?
I think there's a concern here that it might overshadow it on the American side, when France is trying to push this whole idea of Franco-U.S. relations and cooperation. And there is some French officials that have been suggesting that, is it all going to be overshadowed by that? Because that would be a terrible shame. But there have been other concerns. I mean, President Macron came under a lot of criticism for inviting President Trump after he said he wanted to pull out of the Paris Accords. And that is something that there have been protests about. There are protests scheduled for this evening here in Paris, both by Democrats abroad and by French groups. But President Macron has said, even today, he was asked about it earlier at a press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and he said, well, no, of course I am inviting the President of the U.S. This is the commemoration of their entry into the First World War, and we have a long-standing relationship. We have a strong relationship, and this is something that, of course, we are going to do. And he very much rejected any suggestion that he should not have invited President Trump for this commemorative Bastille Day.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is that leaders are often invited to Bastille Day, leaders from around the world. Most likely the plan was to have the American president here because of the significance of this particular anniversary, 100 years since America joined the First World War. You mentioned a protest scheduled, and I wanted to ask you about that. When I first heard about this meeting, I thought to myself, President Trump, he doesn't enjoy a lot of support in France. I wonder if there are going to be large protests. You mentioned one scheduled, but not widespread protests in Paris.
No, there are several issues here. Partly, it is the holiday weekend, and a lot of people get out of town. And also, because of the state of national emergency, random protests aren't allowed. The security is very tight, so it has to be kind of organized and published in advance. But the one this evening, they're calling it the No Trump Zone, and it's at the République Square, which has become very much the center of protests, either in solidarity and against terrorism or against something like President Trump's visit. And they've called on people to come and to make noise against Trump's policies, but also to come and have fun. There is going to be a lot of talking. There is going to be climate change people there, but there are also going to be singers. There's going to be music, and they're encouraging young people to come along as well. So it's very much, they were very much saying, we're not looking for a violent protest. We're not making any huge political statements other than we don't agree with what is happening.
Very interesting. Elaine Cobbe, CBS News radio reporter. You are in Paris. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again throughout the day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.